Start. So, bonjour tout le monde. Good morning, everyone. My name is Antoine Baillargeon, and I'm a program coordinator here at the Ottawa branch. I'd like to begin by recognizing that the Ottawa branch is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We extend our respects to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people for their valuable past, present, and future contributions to this land and to our country. On behalf of the branch, I'm pleased to welcome you to today's session with AIM Fitness titled Stronger at Every Step: Foot, Knee, and Hip Health for Pain-Free Living. I want to give a warm welcome today to our presenter, Meg Stickle. In today's session, Meg will lead us through a strength and mobility session designed to support healthy ankles, knees, and hips. We're also joined today by a special guest speaker, Etienne Asselin, founder of the Exercise Mechanic and certified personal trainer, who will share practical insights on rehabilitation, living with less pain, and steps you can take to improve your mobility as you age. Before we begin, I want to give a special welcome here to anyone who is not yet a member of the association. We hope that these webinars will inspire you to join us. And to our members, we hope that these webinars will encourage you to maintain your membership. I also want to mention that closed captions are available in both French and English. So to access this feature, please click on the closed captions button at the bottom of your screen. And to translate to French, you can click on the little arrow next to the closed captions button and select the translate option. Finally, if you have any questions for Meg and Etienne, please type them in the Q&A box, and they'll be able to answer them after their presentation. So that's all for me, so I'll pass it over to our presenters. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoine. Great to see everybody here today. Thanks for joining. So the format for this morning is we are going to start with Etienne. He's going to be doing a presentation. I'm going to start with an introduction so you can get to know him a little bit better. And following his presentation, I'll be leading us through a hands-on workout. So we're going to be learning this morning. We're going to be trying out what we are learning, and we're going to be moving as well. So Etienne Asselin is a bilingual personal trainer and educator based in Ottawa, Canada, with more than 15 years of experience in the fitness industry. He's the founder of the Exercise Mechanic, a continuing education initiative dedicated to elevating the standard of care in personal training through critical thinking, biomechanics, and evidence-informed practice. As a coach, Etienne works with a wide variety of clients, from athletes to individuals dealing with persistent pain, using a collaborative approach that emphasizes understanding, sustainability, and long-term progress. And as an educator, his work focuses on helping fitness professionals develop the clinical reasoning skills required to deliver thoughtful, individualized exercise solutions. So I want to welcome Etienne. Thank you for being here today. On a personal note, we met about 10 plus years ago through a network of young entrepreneurs, and it's been amazing to see him and his business develop and really expand over the years. So I'm really honored to have him join me today to discuss the topic of rehab. So thanks so much for being here, Etienne.
Thanks for having me, Meg, and thank you so much, Antoine, for hosting. And good morning, everybody who's watching this live, and perhaps good afternoon or good evening if you're watching the recording at a later date. I'm excited about today's topic. Today's topic is very much revolving around the management of pain, the process of rehabilitation, and the place that exercise fits in potentiating those outcomes that we care about. Now, I do have a little bit of a presentation, so I'm going to kickstart that now. Meg, can you give me just a thumbs up to make sure that we're good, that you can see that? Yeah, okay, fantastic. And so, you know, what I want to say here before we dig into this topic, it's important to mention that everything that I'm about to say is going to be general recommendations and observations that can be made at a population level. Where all of this potentially falls apart is where the rubber meets the road at the N of one of you, or at the N of one of someone else. And so what I hope today will be informative about general principles fundamentally, because that's where we really need to start. about pain, the process of rehabilitation, and then once again, where exercise fits. And then towards the end, I have a few sample exercises and recommendations that you guys can take with you and try. You may have already actually done them with Meg during one of the workouts in the past, or maybe she even has it planned for today. I don't know. But in any case, I hope today will be informative. Like they mentioned at the beginning, we do have the Q&A section. So please, if you have questions that are specific to you or general questions, please drop them. It'll be a pleasure to answer them. And so without further ado, let's dig in and try to do this topic service. So in terms of how we're going to kind of organize things, first and foremost, when it comes to this conversation, we need to start off by, I guess we just start from 30,000 feet. We need to ask ourselves fundamentally, like, what is pain? Because if we think about what rehab is as an outcome, the process of rehabilitation is fundamentally, it's two different outcomes. It's the reduction of pain and also the potentiation or the amelioration of function, i.e. doing more. So rehab is effectively hurting less while also concurrently doing more. And so, but at the core of that, we have pain. And so we need to define that. So that's where we're going to be starting today. Secondary to that, we're going to be then going into general recommendations. And then tertiary to that, it's going to be practical recommendations specific to the foot and ankle, knee, and then the hip. So when it comes to some of these like more kind of general recommendations and defining of terms, I figured we'd start with some pain science gems, because I figured that's kind of where we should start here, because it's going to help us understand what is pain and perhaps pave the road for what we can do about it. So fundamentally, the first thing that you guys need to understand is that hurt, so the experience of pain, does not have a causal link with tissue damage. And this can be a little bit of a hard thing to grapple with and wrestle with. For many of us, this is going to be new information. And yet this information has actually been around since 1970. So it's not new per se, but it's new in the grand scheme of the domain of rehabilitation, if you will. And so here what I have is I have two different little diagrams that we can use to kind of have a little bit of a conversation here. These are, so the first one is specific to the back. And then the second one here down here is a little bit more general, an amalgamation of a variety of different data. So if we look at this first table here, this table was data coming from a meta-analysis of over 2,000 individuals who all were asymptomatic. Now, for the majority of you, I'm assuming you probably know what asymptomatic means, but if you don't, asymptomatic means the absence of symptoms. And what they were looking at with these people is how many of these people who had zero back pain had very real degenerative changes or structural changes or structural anomalies that within a mechanical understanding of pain and injury should have a causal link with pain. And if we look here, for instance, at individuals at 50 years of age, and we just kind of go down the list here, 80% of the people of the 50-year-olds in this meta-analysis, 80% of them had disc degeneration. And so in English, we call this degenerative disc disease. This is a disease. And so 80% of these people had this condition, and yet they were completely asymptomatic. 60% of them had a disc bulge, which is essentially a minor herniation. And 36% of them had a more significant herniation, i.e. a disc protrusion, all once again absent of symptoms. 32% of these people at 50 years of age on average had facet degeneration. And so if you're curious about what facet degeneration is, if I just grab the spine here, we have these joints that along the backside of the spine. These are called facet joints. And these joints of the spine are essentially the spine's equivalent of the elbow. Okay, so it's the joints that allow for motion, if you will. And so 32% of the people in this study had degeneration at those joints, which we would essentially categorize as osteoarthritic changes, all asymptomatic. And then even the most interesting one, I believe, is this bottom one, spondylolisthesis. 14% of them had this, which is essentially a fracture of the spine, and where that results in the spine translating forward. So 14% of them had quite literally a fractured or broken vertebrae with subsequent anterior translation and were pain-free. And we don't see this just in the back. Today we're talking about feet, we're talking about knees, we're talking about hips. In this other systematic review, they found that general labral injuries were in 68% of the 2,000 plus people, and they were completely asymptomatic. 37% had cam deformities, 67 had pincer deformities, which essentially means that there was various manifestations of bone growth in the hip and osteophyte development, all asymptomatic. That was in the hip. If we look at knees here, we were looking at like up to 43% of folks greater 40 years of age had osteoarthritic development in their knees, all asymptomatic. Cartilage defects, 43%, meniscal tears, 19, right? So there's a lot of literature, and I don't want to just talk at you, but what I want to impart and share with you and impress upon you is that if it was true that hurt equaled harm, it would be impossible to have these findings. If hurt and harm had a causal link, it would be impossible to see these types of degenerative changes within the body and for people to be totally fine and be able to participate in the various activities that they deem interesting and fulfilling. And so it's interesting. And I believe that this is actually very hopeful and very optimistic. What it sheds light on is it sheds light on the fact that even though we may have a skeleton that has a certain presentation currently at this moment in time, it doesn't mean that we're doomed to hurt. And that's really important. And there's unfortunately a lot that we can do about it, exercise being one of them. The second really big nugget that we need to understand here about pain is that pain is all about protection. And this very much ties in beautifully with this first point, which is that hurt doesn't equal harm. But here's a way to kind of frame this, which is that pain has a future-oriented, quality to it, in that the brain actually creates pain when all of the available, the sum of all of the information available suggests that behavior or that our behavior should be modulated or altered. And so it's very much protective and future-oriented in nature. And the more that we try to tease this out, the more, and very controlled experiments, the more that we find that this is true. This is a really great way to kind of visualize this, is that naturally in the body, we have what's called our protective buffer. And even right now, if you were to do this at home, don't do this if you're driving, and I can't do this because my headphones cover my ears. But if you were to grab your earlobes and pinch them as hard as you can and really squeeze as hard as possible, and then stop when you can't take it anymore. If you were to look at your ears, or if a neighbor was to examine your ears would be undamaged. And yet you experienced very real pain. And the reason for this is that your brain is signaling, hey, if you keep doing this, bad things will happen. Stop, 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 stop. And the stop signal gets louder and louder until you listen. Now, what is also true is that post-injury, this buffer increases. And this is a very sought after adaptation in our nervous system, where there's been trauma and then the body protects the area so that it can heal. What can happen, however, is that this buffer doesn't necessarily change at the same or come back to its resting place, if you will, at the same rate as tissue recovery. And that's what we often see in folks who perhaps sustained an injury 6 months, a year, or many years ago, and they still hurt to this day. Folks with other conditions, whether it be allodynia, fibromyalgia, are essentially representations of the body being in a sensitized state. and they experience very real pain, even though the body isn't in danger and we aren't causing damage. And so once again, pain is all about protection. And this protective strategy is something that's informed by a variety of things, right? This is a quote by Lorimer Moseley, who I consider one of my mentors, and who's very much one of the foremost researchers on pain neuroscience in the world. He's an authority on this subject, and he says that anything that suggests that you need protecting, takes pain up, and anything that suggests you don't takes pain down. This is why when people receive catastrophic diagnoses or confusion around their state, naturally, that's actually a potentiator of sensitivity, and it's a potentiator of pain, and it can entrench the problem. This is why after people get scans to try to better understand why they hurt, when we look at the literature associated with this, we see that it tends to make pain worse when people get scans. Because then when they get a scan, they get additional information about all the things that might be quote unquote suboptimal happening under the skin. Okay. And so it's one way to kind of frame this is what Lorimer Moseley and his colleagues use to kind of as this model of the protectometer, which is that the more that we have evidence in our life that we need protection, whether it be from our lived experience, like an injury, or the narratives that we've inherited through our lives, the conditioning, that can lead to an elevated vigilance of the system. And thus, with elevated vigilance comes a decreased capacity and a decreased tolerance to stimuli, which then results in pain. Okay, so once again, pain is all about protection. It's a second point. It's a little bit hard to kind of digest sometimes, but it's a really crucial part. And then last but not least here, when it comes to pain reduction, is that movement is key. And we see this in manifesting in a variety of ways, but we have this kind of like little diagram here that we can use to visualize this, where predictably, when we're afraid of moving, when we have this idea in our mind that when we hurt, that means that we are hurting our body, right? That the hurt that we are experiencing equals harm. Predictably, it tends to lead to vicious cycles of behavior, which is avoidance, which will then lead to decreased activity, decreased strength, and thus decreased tolerance from a tissue perspective, but also the system remains sensitized, which then increases the likelihood of there being pain and or even injury if the body gets weaker. And it sets in motion this kind of cascade of events of cyclical behavior that can very much entrench the problem. Whereas if we look at the opposite, and which I would say is this, which is driven by this understanding that, yeah, maybe you had an injury recently or a long time ago, and yeah, sure, your body's sore right now. And what's also true is that your body knows how to recover. And that just because things are a little bit sensitive post-injury, which remember is a normal adaptation to tissue trauma, it doesn't mean that the hurt that you're experiencing is reflective of you harming the tissue. And the safety and the self-assuredness that can come from that leads to us engaging in whether it be resistance training or other fulfilling tasks, leads to an increased capacity of tissue and also our nervous systems. The body becomes less sensitive, which then drives decreased risk, decreased pain, and also improved self-efficacy and confidence. And it ends up being a virtuous cycle, which is why at the core of this, pain education is so important and why it's such a powerful potentiator of recovery. And so as we kind of start to get towards the end of today, we'll open things up for Q&A. Another important thing that I want to note here is that exercise is not just a really fantastic tool to desensitize our systems, but it's also essentially the best tool we have for improving physiologic and metabolic health, which is an enormous driver of not only our lifespan, i.e. the totality of our years, but also our health span, right? And us being able to lead a rich life with the time that we have. There's also some really strong literature looking at the link between metabolic and physiologic health and also cognition attention span, memory, the sharpness of our minds, very, very strongly correlated with metabolic health. And exercise is one of our strongest tools for that. Exercise also improves joint health. So even if you've received a diagnosis of, some kind of stage of arthritic change in any joint of your body, whether it be your hip, your ankle, or your knee, or your shoulder or spine, doesn't matter. Gradually loading the body in a controlled and consistent manner can promote healthier cartilage through this process that we actually call imbibition. And then the third point, which is really kind of interesting of why exercise is really powerful, is that one of the greatest predictors of pain chronicity and disability is a lack of active engagement in our recovery and a lack of active engagement in our care. And so engaging with pain and exercising, even in the presence of sensitivity, and the caveat here, I would say, would be if we've experienced a really traumatic event, that's very much one of the major moments where we wouldn't want to poke into pain and we would want to perhaps avoid. But trauma aside, engaging with it promotes self-efficacy. And when we look at the literature, is a potentiator of recovery. And then last but not least, this one might be self-evident based on everything that we've talked about so far, which is that as we get stronger and engaging with exercise and having a more robust and resilient body, and also a more robust and resilient aerobic system as well, leads to us being able to live a rich life, however you define it, and to have a body that can keep up with all of the things that you want to do, whether it be playing sport, going skiing, snowshoeing in the slush that we have in the national capital area right now, playing with your kids, playing with your grandkids, running with your dog. It doesn't matter. However you define it, having a robust body is a driver of that. And so I didn't want to just talk at you and talk about general principles, but understand that the general principles are the core of every single recommendation. And what I wanted to do is I want to give you, as we start to wrap up today, something concrete that you could do specifically at the ankle as well as knee and hip. You'll notice they're not super fancy, but they can be really great tools to desensitize areas and make your body a little bit more receptive to movement. And so if we think about the foot and ankle complex, which is the first point of contact that makes contact with the earth, and that's a requirement for bipedal motion and to move through the world, having a good functioning foot and shank, so lower leg, is essential. And so first and foremost, what I tend to recommend for a lot of my clients is taking a lacrosse ball, not so much of a tennis ball, but take some kind of lacrosse ball and rolling the undersurface of the foot, which can be really great if you have foot pain to just desensitize the foot because it acts as a little bit of a massage. So it can calibrate the sensitivity of the foot. But also, as we roll over the ball, it gets all of our joints moving in our feet that perhaps are not used to moving in that manner, which can promote healthier joints, as we talked about before, and is a driver of increased function and mobility and independence. And then if we think about one exercise that's a really great mobility and also strength exercise for the lower leg, it's the really simple calf raise. Because as we lift up onto our toes, as you can see on this diagram here on the right, it requires the mobility of the forefoot, so the junction between the foot and the toes. It requires mobility through the hind foot region of where the midfoot articulates with the lower leg, and also strength in some of our primary muscles that propel us through the world. So something as simple as mobilizing and massaging the foot with something like a lacrosse ball and engaging with calf raises a few times a week, whether it be done from the floor or even from a deficit. So if you elevate the forefoot, can be really, really, really powerful. And then lastly here, when it comes to the knee and the hip, we've got some really simple recommendations. First is what we would call a knee CAR. CAR would stand for controlled articular rotations, as you can see this gentleman here on the left. So something as simple as laying down on the ground, if I was to do that even from my chair here. So if you imagine I'm laying down, if you just grab your knee like this and you extend your knee fully and you think about try to break your knee, if you will, by contracting your quad. So terminal knee extension and then terminal knee flexion of your knee and going through that range of motion can be a really great start if you're not familiar, if you're not currently exercising. Something low load like that can be a really great way to start introducing movement, desensitizing the knee, excuse me, and getting you moving with exercise. And then something as simple as deep squats, whether they be supported, as shown here by this woman doing a TRX assisted deep squat, can help us get into those deep positions of knee flexion to strengthen the quads, strengthen the glutes, and then also progressing that towards, for instance, something like a goblet squat, like this woman here is doing on the right. And once again, this is just an example of one exercise of a progression that you could do. But this would be a really great place to start if you're looking to have knees that are strong and mobile, as well as hips that are strong and mobile, so you could do things in your life. Those exercises would be really fantastic places to start. Of course, just remember that what you can do is not limited to this. This is just one example. And so we'll move forward with some Q&A. I think a few messages came in, so I'll turn off my screen here in a moment. If any of you guys are interested in having a free discovery call to talk about your specific condition or your specific concerns, if you'd like to link up with me for about 20 minutes to talk about your specific questions, feel free to scan the QR code to learn more about my service offerings. And you can also book in a discovery call free of charge and also no obligation. But that's what we'll wrap up with my presentation. Meg, I think we have some questions, so why don't we dig into those?
Thank you. Great job. All right, we've got 3 comments, questions here. So the first one is someone was wondering about gout. Do you have anything to add about gout in particular, or is that best
Yeah.
to book a call with you to dive a little deeper?
So I would say both. The truth is that it's always N of one. That being said, gout is one that has really significant nutritional drivers for that drive why people hurt. So normally what we look at is we look at trying to minimize the things that we're doing that are just stacking the deck, not in your favor, but stacking the deck against you when it comes to pain. So with gout, normally we look at nutritional and lifestyle interventions first. And also exercise can help to, just generally speaking, calibrate the sensitivity of the area. So primary area that gout will manifest pain or manifest in is going to be the feet. So something like the lacrosse ball could be really useful to just help desensitize the foot, which that coupled with some exercise and also nutritional lifestyle intervention would be a great place to start. But yeah, if you're interested in talking about the details, I would really invite you to book in a call and we can hash about that more.
Okay, awesome. And then another comment from the same person is they're asking if you could elaborate on metabolic and physiological health.
Okay, yeah, sure. So if we think of like when we're talking about metabolic and physiological health here, we're talking about, if we talk about, oh boy, I wish I had my notes here. What many people would call like I think like the 3 horsemen of death, which would be like cognitive decline. We've got vascular, not degeneration, but like blood lipid challenges that can result in strokes, heart attacks, etc. Exercise as a whole, because of how muscles, when they contract, burn up fuel and then thus can act as kind of sponges, if you will, to store fuel, it can result in better blood lipid panels. And so what we're talking about here in terms of like improved physiologic and metabolic health, here we're talking about how exercise can be a potentiator for better internal health that results in better lifespan and also better cognition. So hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Someone is asking, can you use a yoga ball instead of a lacrosse ball?
Yes. So yoga balls, absolutely. It depends on which yoga balls this specific individual is talking about. The key thing that you're going to want is you want to make sure it's dense enough so that when you apply pressure, that it results in some of the articulations in the foot moving. You don't want the ball to cave underneath the foot too much. So you want it to impose a constraint upwards on the foot. And so it depends on the yoga ball. Like if we're talking about a Coregeous ball, which are like ultra squishy, maybe not. But if we're thinking about some of the other yoga tune-up balls that aren't quite as dense as a lacrosse ball, those would be fine. The only I would say consideration with those is that they tend to be slippy. So I would say go barefoot, not sock foot when you're using them. So that way your skin grips to the ball and it'll just result in the implement being more effective.
Okay, awesome. That's helpful. And then someone's asking, is there an email address for those who do not scan, who can't scan for the 20-minute consultation? And the answer for that, I can answer that is yes. We will definitely share Etienne's email address that will go out with the follow-up email. So you'll get this recording as well. So yes, you can
Correct.
definitely contact him that way as well.
Correct.
All right, yeah. And we have one more. After multiple compression fractures, should I be cautious of any exercise?
So thank you for your question. What I would say is the devil's in the details. So first question would be, when did the compression fractures happen, or when was your most recent one? Do you have any other contraindications of health that are leading to you being predisposed to a high volume of compression fractures, or are they just due to, for instance, the rampant and enthusiastic engaging in sport? But generally speaking, what I would say is, if we think about the question was, would there be any considerations or reasons why she shouldn't or they shouldn't, with Meg, if I'm understanding correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no more details, so I think so.
Yeah. So what I would say is, exercise is infinitely scalable. You can scale it down to something that's going to be appropriate, and you can also scale it up. So there's almost infinite, like the runway of progression with the intervention of exercise is massive. And so if someone is really sensitive because of multiple compression fractures and it's due to other health concerns, I would still say that it isn't necessary, that exercise isn't contraindicated. We just have to find the right entry point. And maybe that entry point will be lower than where they would hope initially, because we're erring on the side of caution and we want to just gradually expose bone to the stressors associated with various exercises. But so long as you dose it appropriately, it's not some, it's exercise is has the potential of being useful for, I would say, everybody, because bones remodel along lines of stress. And so long as we don't do, and this is kind of, for those that are listening, the key cardinal rule with injury prevention and pain reduction, if you were to remember one thing from today, other than hurt doesn't equal harm, of course, it's that so long as you don't do too much, too fast, too soon, you're going to be fine. So what we mean by that is too much is, if you've never exercised before, don't go put a 300-pound barbell on your back. Start with your body weight. It's kind of intuitive and self-explanatory, but it's worth mentioning. So that's the too much part. Too fast makes reference to rate of progression. So don't go from doing 0 squats to then over the course of a month doing 1,000. Start gradually and engage with it consistently. And then too soon makes reference to proximity of injury. So if you just got an injury, maybe you would want to dial back for a week or a few weeks to give your system the opportunity to kind of calm down. But as soon as you feel like your body's going to be receptive to loading, I would really engage you to do so.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that reminds me of a lot of people who I've talked to and who've said, I've done nothing. I haven't exercised at all since COVID. And,
Right.
so it's one of those things you want to get back into your routine. But if you start from where you were 5, 6 years ago, you're not going to be able to do that well. That will often result in an injury, or you'll really feel it. It'll be a bit too much. So it is really good to listen to your body, and I really get that's what you're saying is, do what feels appropriate, but at the same time, challenge some of those beliefs when it comes to pain. And I think what
Mhm.
you've shared with us today is really a lot for us to digest, and will be really, really good for us to think about. How can we move a little bit more? How can we push ourselves a little bit more? And really, that is the
Mhm.
benefit of working with a personal trainer, whether it's someone like Etienne or myself, because we'll be able to lead you through exercises that we know are really good for you, instead of just someone stopping on their own when they think, oh, this is too much, I'm feeling pain. So, yes, there is
100%.
a fine line, isn't there?
It's really tricky, and truly, Meg, I'm really happy you brought that up because like it is really, really hard to know where that line is. I have trouble knowing where that line is for myself when it comes to my own to my own training, and even when we start working with people, it's really hard to know where that line is because we can't go to a bookstore and buy the Coles notes of how to work with a certain person. Like we need to figure that out through trial and error, and it is a tricky process to engage in that you had mentioned earlier, where both things are true, which is like, yeah, things hurt. We need to listen to our bodies, but it's also valuable to challenge ourselves. And there's a tension between those two things. And it's worth engaging in that process, even if it's uncertain, because truly, I think that the risk of engaging with it and the risk of overcooking it, and also the risk of getting it right and getting better is a way better option than the guaranteed outcome that comes from avoidance, which predictably just leads to weakness, decreased independence, decreased function, and usually increased sensitivity. So it's one of those things that, as much as it's murky, it's worth engaging in. And just, I would encourage those that are listening, don't lose sight of the truth, which is that your body is a fundamentally adaptable machine. And once again, so long as you don't do too much, too fast, too soon, you treat it well, you sleep well, you eat well, you are fundamentally adaptable, and you can make progress and improve regardless of your age.
Awesome. There's a few other questions that we can't get to, but the one that I think is great to know is, what are some online credible resources for learning more? And Etienne, I know you mentioned that one quote of someone who's done a lot in the field of pain. So maybe you
Yes,
can share his name, and maybe a resource or two. You can send that
absolutely.
to me, and then we can send that out to all of the participants today. That would be
Absolutely. I'd
great.
be happy to.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing. This has just been really, really, really important for us to hear. So, everyone else, do not go anywhere. We are now going to practice what we preach. We're going to be moving, and we're going to start by standing. So, you can join me. We're going to start with a warm up. I know you've probably been sitting and are just anxious to get started. So, thanks again, Etienne. Take care.
Thank you, Meg. Bye, everybody.
All right, so we will be using resistance bands today. So I know some of you have a long band. If you don't have a band, that's okay. You don't need one, but we're going to be doing some exercises with this. Some of you have my AIM Fitness mini bands. So if you have one of those, go grab that. And we're going to stand together. So you can move your chair back, make sure you have lots of space around you. We're going to start with a warm up. And we're going to use our band for our warm up. All right, so if you've got the long band, you can hold on about an arm's length apart. And we're going to be starting with a figure eight and a side step. So we're stepping side to side. All right, now just make sure that as you're exercising at home, that you are exercising safely. So standing tall, breathing is all important, but make sure there's nothing on the floor. Make sure that chair is tucked out of the way. But if you need to use it at any point for balance, go ahead. All right, from here, we're going to be bending at the knees, kicking those legs back, and then with the band, reach in front. Good. So our legs are nice and wide. As you kick back, your knee should be pointing towards the floor. And then to really engage through the back, think about squeezing your shoulder blades, squeeze those elbows back. Good. Breathing in and out, another 3 and 2 and 1. And then from here, we're going to do a forward tap. So tap those toes, and we're going to be lifting the arms up and lower the arms down. Lift up and lower. Good. So remember to listen to your body. Remember to do what you can. So that means range of motion. If there's something that doesn't feel good, maybe you can only go halfway because of a shoulder issue. Don't push it. Don't try to keep up with me, but instead follow along. I'm leading you, but it's really up to you to do what you can. Good. Let's do another 3. Good. And 2. Good. And 1. Excellent. So I have 4 exercises we're going to be doing standing that focus on knees, hips, ankles, and then we're going to be doing 4 more exercises sitting on the chair. So you can set that band off to the side. We are going to be facing our chair, and I love that Etienne chose the exact exercise that I chose for our first one. So our calf raise. So the calf raise is important. As he said, this is for the back of the leg. You'll feel that right away. But I have an add-on. So we're going to be doing 1 calf raise, and then we're going to bend one leg, kick the leg back gently, and do the other side. So here we go. Heel raise up and bend at the knee. You'll notice my knee is still pointing down towards the floor. So we're working the back of the legs, our hamstrings. Good. So we'll do each exercise between 10 and 15 times. I will keep count as best as I can so you can focus on the form. And you'll notice this is a really gentle exercise, gentle on the knees. You may hear some cracking, which is normal. Good. Try to really work through the movements, feeling the back of the legs working, and then the lower leg as you lift up. Good. So I like to hold on to the chair because then you don't have to think about balance. That's a whole other element for later. Good. All right. So this is 10. So we'll do 3 more. Breathing in and out. Good. So noticing the back of the leg as you bend the knee. Good. Up. Excellent. And then 1 more round. Up. And kick back. All right, good. So today is all about being practical. So what are those movements that we do every day? Whether you live in a home or you live in a condo or you're going out and about, you do have to go up and down stairs and over curbs. And so this next exercise is going to help to strengthen the knees for that. So what we're going to do is we are going to, again, face that chair, holding on if you'd like. We're going to do 3 steps. So we're going to be lifting your knees nice and high, and then we'll be moving into a squat. So I'll demonstrate first. So lift the leg nice and high. So we'll do 1 and 2, engaging through the core as we lift. And then we want our feet to be about as wide as our hips and squat. Hips back, like you're sitting back on a chair behind you, and rise up. So you can join me. We're going to do 10 more of these. So we're going to do a lift. So lift that knee. 1, 2, and 3. Legs about hip width. And then squat back like you're sitting on a chair. Weight in the heels. So here we go. So lift, lift, lift. Lower that foot and squat. Good. So this is really reminding us to lift those feet, lift those legs up nice and high when we are doing stairs. Hips back, weight in the heels, and rise up. Good. So 1, 2, 3, and squat. Good. Now, if your knees bother you, you don't have to go quite as low. The other option is to do a mini squat like this and then rise up. Now, this is an exercise I do with every single one of my clients, even those who do have bad knees, because we do this motion every single day, whether we're getting up out of a chair, off a couch, out of bed. We need to have that ability to bend and to weight bear. Good. All right, a few more. Lifting, tightening up the core. That really helps. And down. Good. All right, we're going to do one more here. 1, 2, 3. And down. I'm going to show you one other option. Let's say you do this often enough, which I encourage you to do. You can always challenge the balance. Okay, so lifting, we're doing a slow motion lift. 2 and 3. And then the advanced option for the squat is hands together as you go back with your hips. All right, so that's exercise number 2. Exercise number 3 is focusing on those legs again. We're going to be doing a tandem lunge. So 2 options. You can have your heel touching your toe, or you can be a little bit more staggered with your hip. Your hips are here, your feet are right below the hips. So if you have bad hips, I would recommend you have your feet a little bit wider. Okay, so this is what it looks like from the side. We're going to be hinging from your hips. So take your bum back and bend both knees and then stand up tall. So we are doing that hip hinge, hinging forwards, holding onto the chair or hands at your heart. Good, bending those knees. This is again very gentle. And this is an alternative to doing a full lunge. I'll demonstrate what that looks like. So in a regular lunge, you'd have your legs further apart, heel is lifted, and you are bending the knees. And you're gonna have an angle here, right angle. So that's really hard on a lot of people's knees, so I really prefer to do this with my clients. And it's a lot more gentle. So if you have hip issues, knee pain, most people can still do this, and it feels good. All right, let's do another 3 on this side. Good. 2 and 1. Good. Now while we're here, let's find that balance. So shift to your back foot, lift your front leg, and we're going to do 5 lifts, lifting one hand or both. So lifting 2. Tighten up that core. It helps to look straight ahead, find a focal point. And one more time. Good. Let's lift again. One more and hold, circling your wrists, circling your ankle if you're able to. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Other side. So again, heel touching toe or a little bit wider is fine. You might have one side that you can do one. The other side feels a little better doing the other. Good. So aiming for 10. So it's 3. Good. So hinging forwards. Stick that bum right out. Feeling this all over that leg. So you should feel that in the front thighs, the back of the leg, also your glutes too. And don't forget to breathe. Breathing in and out. 3. Good. And 2. And 1. All right, like we did on the other side, shift to the back foot, using the chair for balance if you need to, and lift the leg, front leg. 5, 4, challenge that balance. 3, 2, 1, and keep it lifted, circling the ankle, circle your wrists. Good, so a few things as we balance, we want to tighten up that core, squeeze the glutes, look straight ahead. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and lower. Excellent. So we're going to do one more standing, then we'll move to the chair. Bend the knee. You can place your hand on your hip, and we're going to be doing some circles. So we're circling out to start. So you can choose to do smaller circles where your knee is pointing towards the floor, or lift a little bit more. You'll feel this more in the hip, more in the glute as you take the leg back. 3, 2, And 1, change directions. 10, 9, 8. You can choose to find that balance as well, maybe with one finger, but we really want to focus on the exercise. 3, 2, and 1. Good. Let's walk it out. All right. Circle the shoulders back. Yeah, and I hope you're feeling really good. And I hope you're noticing that these exercises are gentle. They are doable. They are possible. That's really our goal today, is to show you something new that you can try. Other leg. So bend the knee. Start by circling out. Good. Now it does help to bend your other knee, but supporting you slightly. Don't lock that knee. Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And then change directions. 10. Maybe challenging that balance if this feels good for you. Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. Let's walk that out. Circle your shoulders backwards. All right. Wonderful. So we're going to move to our chair. Have a seat. Oh, and here's Fit Finley joining us. Have a seat. All right, so our first exercise, we are going to be looping the band under your foot. So one foot. Now, I encourage you to sit up tall in your chair. Make sure your chair is nice and sturdy, no wheels. All right, we're going to start by putting that right in the middle of your foot towards the top. And we're going to be pointing and flexing. So point and flex. We want the band to be tight enough that you feel your ankle working. So we're focusing on our ankles for this one, ankle strength. Good. I think a time when most people realize their ankles are not as strong as they want is when you're skating. Yes. Did anyone make it to the canal this year? I went once and the conditions were perfect. It was a beautiful day. But I did notice, oh, I don't use these muscles very much. Felt it in my hips and definitely my ankles too. Good. 2 and 1. We're going to move to the other side. So again, position that band. I do recommend doing this with shoes, running shoes, because if you're wearing sock feet, the band will fly off. So either barefoot, but ideally you're wearing running shoes for this one. Good. And you'll feel your arms working as well. You got to hold that band nice and tight. And you'll feel this right around that ankle joint, also in the back of the leg again. And as you know, everything is connected. So it's important to strengthen the muscles around our joints in order to relieve any pain, any stiffness. 3, 2, and 1. All right, let's go back to the first side. Looping the band underneath that foot. We're going to do some circles. So keep that leg fairly straight. We're sitting towards the edge of the chair. So got lots of motion, lots of room here. So circling. Good. Bend those elbows, holding onto the band, not moving your arms. This is all the legs right now. Good. So this is a good one to strengthen up the hip. Good. 3, 2, 1, and then the other way. Good. Now, if you lean backwards just a bit, still not touching the chair, you might feel your core engage as well. Good. All right, how are we doing? Make sure you let me know at the end of our workout. We've got 3 more exercises, including this one. But let me know at the end. I'd love to hear how you're feeling. 2, 1, and let's release. Other side. So lift, lean back a little bit to feel the core working. Circling, nice and gentle, not speeding through it. Take your time. Good. Now, I do want to remind everybody that as a NAFR member, you do receive 33% off my membership. So if you're enjoying the exercises that we're doing today, you'll love my fitness membership because I've put together exercise videos that are 20 to 30 minutes in length that you can do every day And it's really easy to follow along with. Let's do the other way. All right. You might notice one direction feels better than the other, or you're feeling a little more. If you've done anything active recently, sometimes you'll feel muscles you haven't used in a while. 3, 2, and 1. And then we'll switch to the other leg. This is one of my favorites. For this one, you get to lean back against the chair, tighten up the band so that it's nice and tight in this position where your knee is up. And we're going to bicycle, so do some circles. Good. So again, going slow, press against the band. Every time your knee comes in, activate that core. All right, very good. And then I wanted to give you another reminder that I am leading these webinars once a month. Once a month. So make sure you put it on your calendar, the second Tuesday of the month. So you do have to sign up. Make sure you register. And if you have a friend who you think could benefit as well, every month there's a different topic. Please spread the word, encourage them to join you as well. All right, we're going to change directions, going the other way. Other way. We have to think about this one. Takes a little more coordination to go the other way. Good, breathing in and out. Let's do 3, 2, and 1. Good. All right, change to the other side. We're getting to the end of it, so I want to do one more as well. So we're going to do just a few on this side. You can finish them up after. 3, 2, and 1, and change direction. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, so this last one, I'll demonstrate this one. You can also do this with the mini band. And if you haven't bought your AIM Fitness mini bands, you can reach out. I do sell them. So you can put that right above your knee. Or with our longer band, you can put it underneath the legs and do a crossover. Okay, so we're crossing, tighten up the band. We'll sit near the edge and then have your hands land right on your hips, right beside you. We're going to be pressing out. So knees go out and then legs come in. So you'll feel this in the outer thigh and in the hips. Really good for stretching. If that's too much, you can always do it without the band. But I like the band for the added resistance. So continue to sit up nice and tall. We'll do 3, 2, and 1. All right, good. So I encourage you to do all of these exercises again. These 8 exercises are really going to be helpful for your joints, things you can do every day. So really quickly, I'm going to lead you through a few stretches. The first one is to stretch out the back of the leg. So hinge forwards, lift that toe, reach towards your foot. And let's take a few deep breaths in and out. Feeling nice, stretch up the back of the leg, also in your back too. Breathing in and out. One more time. Let's do the other side. Good. The more you lift that toe, the more you'll feel the stretch. And don't worry if you can't touch your toes. That's not the goal. The goal is a gentle stretch. No pain. Breathing in and out. Good. All right. Come on up. We're going to stand behind your chair, finishing with one more stretch. Good. So we're going to stretch out the front of the leg. So separate those legs, bend into the front knee, back leg stays straight. And then we're going to reach up that arm and shift forwards and lean your shoulders back and feel that stretch in the front of the back leg. So these are our hip flexors that get really tight. They get tight just from sitting. So really the best thing we can do is move during the day. There's so many studies that talk about that. They say that sitting is the new smoking, that by being sedentary, there's a lot of disease, a lot of stiffness, a lot of soreness, a lot of things that we can prevent if we keep moving. All right, good. Let's release and let's finish with our breathing. Let's bring those arms up, inhale, And then exhale. So notice how you're feeling today. Let me know in the chat. We're almost done. If anyone has a comment, if you have a question, you can leave it in the chat. Good. Thank you for joining us. One more inhale and then exhale and give yourselves a big hug. Wonderful job, everybody. Great job.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you everyone for your participation in today's webinar. And of course, a big thank you to Meg and Etienne for the wonderful information that he shared, and to Meg for the great workout afterwards. As Meg mentioned, there will be a follow-up email that will be sent out later today, and that'll contain the recording for today's presentation, as well as the contact information for AIM Fitness and Etienne. Remember too that you can invite non-members to attend our webinars as a guest, and to register for any of our upcoming Ottawa branch webinars, please visit our website at nafrottawa.com. So thank you everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.